Well, hello and welcome back, everybody, to the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. I'm Dan John, and this is episode 237. This is a question and answer podcast. So if you have questions, send them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer each and every one, and let's get started. These last few weeks, the questions have really jumped, so let's get going. This is from Orlando. He says, I wear a heart rate monitor during my easy strength workout since I walk immediately after. By the time I complete my warm-ups, and that's hangs, goblet squats, and he does 75 swings, his heart rate is high, and it spikes after each working set. I wait until my heart rate gets down to my Maffetone numbers, Phil Maffetone, the chiropractor who also trains triathletes, numbers before I start again. You often say that you complete your easy strength workouts in 10 to 15 minutes. I can't get mine done in less than 22 minutes. I average 25 minutes unless I'm huffing and puffing throughout the high heart rate, and I think that misses the point of the program, strength. If I just did the push-pull deadlift, I could smoke the time, but I just can't hit that numbers after I do the swings. Am I overthinking it? First off, yes, you are overthinking it, and that is a really common thing. When I don't worry about my heart rate personally. When I'm doing easy strength for fat loss, and that book is available at danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore. When I'm doing ES for fat loss, I focus real hard on those heart rate numbers during the walk, but the workout is the workout. So if my heart rate is high during the rack deadlifts and the military press, well, that's because I'm working out with big loads for sets of 5 and my heart rate jumps up. It's in the walking that I worry about the Maffetone numbers, and that for most, a real simple way to think of it is you want a large section of your training to be between these two numbers. So 180 minus your age and 160 minus your age. Now, this morning with Mike, I realized that now my numbers are, I got to keep my heart rate between 97 and 117. 93 and 113. Sorry, I just took years off my age. For me to work out between 93 and 113, I mean, that's just not very hard. I mean, it's my heart rate's a little bit higher than like I would be at a track meet, standing around. But it's not very high at all. It's very easy for me to get to those numbers, to the point that I've reduced the number of the amount of weight on my weight vest and even my weight in my hands, even on most of my heavy hand workouts, just so I can keep my numbers a little bit lower. I think the heart rate lower allows you to do the heart rate longer when it comes to things like walking, rucking, heavy hands, and I'm sure other things too. I don't want to move into running on that, but if you read some of the work in the 70s when they were talking about swimming and distance running, they already in the 1970s were discussing that the heart rate was a little too high for most people to venture off into it. If you're racing, that heart rate's got to be where that heart rate's got to be. But yeah, I think you might be a little stuck on the warm-up heart rate numbers. Now, if it's a real factor, I mean, you're just dying, well, then ease up somehow. If you read the book, one of the things I wanted to bring up on this is that for a lot of people I'm now working with, especially with the easy strength for fat loss, we're not doing the swings in the warm-up anymore. And that's only because of the situation you're talking about. And the idea is that we're trying to get longer walks in. So, but if you hang like most of us do, in my gym anyway, you sit at the bottom of a goblet squat, you shake it out a bit. It's pretty easy to do the vertical press, the vertical pull, the deadlift variation, the ab wheel, and then the suitcase carry. And then at the end of the suitcase carry, off to your walk. So I think it's your version of easy strength. Now, the fault lies with me. I mean, I obviously haven't done a very good job explaining this. And I've got a free video on this YouTube. I've got 2-3 books on easy strength, dozens and dozens of articles. And I think that's where the issue comes up, by the way, because very often I'll answer a specific question about easy strength for fat loss. And some people who are doing easy strength as athletes are listening to that and going, wait a second, that's different. So remember, we're all just different enough with our goals and what we're trying to achieve that there's going to be a little difference in the work. Orlando has a follow-up. Also, although it was called the 40-day program, that was just the original title, okay? What do you think would happen if you did easy strength for a year? Well, I mean, to quote Willy Wonka at the end of the, what happened to the man who all of his dreams came true? He was very happy. I think if you do easy strength for a year, and I know you can do easy strength for up to 3 years, easy strength for fat loss for up to 3 years, because I do have someone who's at that number now. The one thing is they have a lot of smiles on their face. I was talking to Tom this morning, the guy from the forum, and one of the things, I had a person, the feedback I thought was pretty cool. They, just like me, lost 35 pounds doing easy strength for fat loss. Well, the follow-up was this. What's nice is I'm still where I was. So the person's still doing easy strength for fat loss, and they have not had any bumps up, didn't have to raise the ceiling on their body weight, didn't have to go out and buy new clothes again. They've maintained their body weight because that's what they want to do. So that, yes, it is something you can do long term. With variation occurred once in the 40 days of workout are complete. If you're doing 5 days a week, that is 6 easy strength cycles a year. What adjustments, if any, would you make? I've got full chapters on that, Orlando, in Easy Strength Omni book. Again, danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore. I talk a lot about variations. I have 3 plans for variation. One of my favorite variations is going to be weird. None. Don't vary at all. When I'm doing my Olympic lift program, there's no variation at all in it because it's, we're focused on, the platform. A lot of people need more variation. I have noticed in my career, it's a phrase Pat Flynn uses, randomness for fun, and variation is a lot of fun, but awesome. Sometimes it doesn't really help. I hope that answers your question. These were good questions. I know I referred to you to the books because I get the sense that a lot of the stuff that's in the book might help you. Thank you. We have a question from Philip. My brother's name was Philip. I have competed in powerlifting and strongman for a little over 5 years. For strongman competitions, I generally have a simple program of push, pull, hinge squat, and an event day. And by the way, Philip, just total honesty, I've worked with a number of strongmen. They're all very good. Ben Tuma, of course, was outstanding out there on the East Coast for a while. Another one was, very well-paid young man for doing this. And one of the things I always encouraged them to do was more practice of the events. One of my concerns, and this might have changed, as it would have been 20 years ago. Strongman has been around with the television show on ABC's Wide World of Sports would probably be the late 70s. Franco Colombo, that's where he ripped his knee apart, on the refrigerator carry. Bish Delegowitz, Zbigniew Delegowitz was in some of the early ones. These are people I know, but one of the things that when it started to become a little bit more popular and more money in the early aughts, a lot of people were still doing their sport, powerlifting or whatever it was, and then show up and do the strongman events. Nowadays, I think you need more practice on the events. So my answer is, I like the idea that you're doing an event a day. I'd like to encourage you to do even more than that. My next competition will be 12 odd lifts. The Zurcher lift, the Steinborn lift, the clean and press, heels together. That's good. This reminds me of the All-American weightlifting group. 2-hand clean and jerk, leg press and a rack, hand and thigh. Hats off to Joe Garcia right there, my good friend, who I think still has the world record in the hand and thigh lift. The bench press with feet in the air, deadlift, heels together, hack lift, harness lift, hip lift, one-hand deadlift. My question is, how would you program your training for a competition with so many events? This will be my 3rd odd lifting meet. In the past, I've just played with the movements a couple of times before the meet, but I didn't change out of my regular training. How do I better prepare for a long event without chasing too many rabbits? Okay, so Philip, this is a different question than training for strongman. You have a nice thing, you have specific exercises you're going to do. One of the things I recommend, he's no longer with us, but John McKeon, I always thought had some great insights. He's an odd lifter. John, and then his last name's McKean. And at the All Around Weightlifting Association, I think they have his articles. One of the things I liked a lot about what he did was he would push, and it's a phrase we use in throwing, it's a phrase I use in finance. If you're part of Nick Peterson's bumpers, you'll understand it. It's the idea is to raise the floor, and very much an easy strength approach to this. But one thing I'd like you to think about is you obviously already have done some of these events, but one thing I would try to do, you can do it either, try to find the events that kind of sing together a little bit. I don't want to go into too much depth here, but you've got clean and jerk, you've got a press with the heels together somewhere, you've got one hand deadlift, you've got a deadlift with heels together, and you've got a hack lift, okay? So there, you've got some Olympic lifts and you've got deadlift variations. You also have a whole bunch of different, traditional strongman lifts, though the Zercher is going to be something, I'm going to do one thing with the Zercher. I would make the Zercher your goblet squat. So I would do the Zercher every single day when you get to the gym. There's something, I don't like them. I mean, they hurt my elbows, and that's why I don't like them. That's not the toughest thing I ever said in my life, but the nice thing about Zerchers is you're going to get all the benefits of goblet squats. You get all the benefits from all kinds of anaconda work without having to, go to it. I would go light on them, and I would use them as kind of a movement warm-up. I think you need to break down the exercises into groups. And I think I wouldn't mind if you had 4 training sessions a week and try to have an overhead thing I'm just making this up, but on day 1 and on day 3, you have some of the overhead work. So you're clean and jerk, you're on Monday, you're clean and press on Thursday. With the thing like the leg lift, the hand and thigh, and some of the other kind of more equipment-y kind of things. I don't know what your situation is, but you might even have to circle another day where you go to a place where they have the equipment you can train on. If they don't, take the exercises as best you can. I would do probably have the one hand deadlift on day 1, have the heels together deadlift on day 2, and any other, the hand and thigh is kind of deadlifty-ish, and then on this day, because you overhead clean and jerk. On day 3, you clean and press. Maybe day 4, you do that bench press variation. But I think all your training should be these exercises. And the reason I say that, it looks like almost most of them can be done with a standard barbell. And there's so many from the floor. By the way, I think that's very impressive. Zercher, maybe every day as a warm-up. Spread those overhead pieces out over the 4 days. Spread those hinge variations out over the 4 days. Your leg one is interesting because it's the leg press. And now my training ideas. What I would do is get a sense of what you think about 65 to 75% is. And I like to do something as simple as this. 3 days a week, you warm up a little bit, you do your Zerchers, and it wouldn't be a terrible idea to pick one a day and do a little extra. But this is now, I'm already polluting things. And I would expect you to do at least 3 sets of 3 with each of these practice lifts. Okay. I want you to practice the lifts at least once a week, 3 sets of 3. Not a lot of volume, but that's okay because you have 12 lifts. If you can figure out a situation where you can go to a gym and get the leg press, the harness in, the hack you can probably do at home, the hand and thigh you need equipment for. But on that day you go where the equipment is, maybe you ramp that up because you're not going to have the chance to practice. So I don't want you doing 3 sets of 3 in the leg press, but I would like you to, get the movement of leg presses done a lot. And I think what I'd like you to try to do is, whether it's 3 sets of 3, and if you want to do more, slide up to 5 sets of 3, but get yourself at a place where you're practicing the lifts, each lift a session a week, followed by the other lifts, and practice that up. Now, after about 2 weeks of that, I'm going to ask you to do something kind of crazy. Circle a Saturday, and I don't necessarily want you to do all 12 lifts, but I want you to go into the facility and do maybe something as simple as 1 set of 3 with each of the lifts. So you practice being a little bit tired as you go in. Now, obviously, if you can get to the place that, if you have a situation where you can do all 12, scratch out a good, couple of hours and try to do all 12. Take a few warm-ups with each movement, and then move up, but only take 1 or 2 attempts and just practice, because you have to practice the specific conditioning of being tired when you move from exercise to exercise. One thing I would recommend is reach out to guys like Joe Garcia and the rest that do this kind of thing a lot more often than I do, and get their advice. But from my conversations with Joe and some emails with John, the most important thing you do is keep coming back to those training sessions where you're training the odd lifts. The problem, according to both Joe and John in our conversations, is people show up in great shape, but they've never specifically done a one-handed deadlift. And they've never done the one-handed deadlift after doing the hack squat. So you need to make sure you prepare yourself for all of that. Philip, I hope that helped, and thank you. That's a very good question. We have a question from Harry. I would be very interested in your thoughts on these standards I've been working towards. 500-pound deadlift, 400-pound squat, 300-pound bench, 200-pound overhead press, 100-pound weighted pull-up or chin. My thoughts are strength-wise, you could be more than strong enough. You'd be more than strong enough. Aesthetically, you would have a well-rounded physique, and with the weighted chin in the mix, you would keep your body fat down to achieve this. One thing is that the question here is, what are my thoughts? Frankly, even if you're an elite athlete, and this is a conversation I had many years ago with Dan Martin, you probably are getting all the value out of the back squat when you get to 400 pounds for most sports. I've talked about this story a lot in my life. I kept driving my squat up higher and higher, and my performance as a discus thrower kept coming back to me. They got worse. 500-pound deadlift, that's strong. 300 bench, that's strong. There's nothing wrong. Now, it was interesting because when I looked, the 3, the 4, and the 5 weren't the ones I went, The ones I went, on were the overhead press and the weighted pull-up. I'm very proud of the fact that I have clean and pressed 300 pounds. In my youth, there have been a lot of people being able to do that. And I've slowly noticed in my career and my life, less and less people are now strong in the military press, which I love. I think that 200-pound overhead press, for most people I work with, would be the hardest one of that group. And then your thoughts on the 100-pound weighted pull-up. When I tried to do the beast challenge, you have to do it like this, thumbs behind, and you have to get your chin held there. I got my chin, I got my lips to the bar, but I couldn't do this with that particular grip. The beast is 106, 48 kilos, and I couldn't get to there. So I'm just saying that's a good lift. And I think there's something I hope all the listeners are listening to, is that he threw in an exercise that had a body weight component, so he couldn't just bulk up to 400 pounds and still pull that off. So I like the list. I think that would make you stronger than most people. I think it would bring you in relationship to Harry Pascal's number. for those of you get a chance, Bill Hinburn on his site, Super Strongman maybe, Bill has copies of Bosco's work. And my favorite, there's two books that I like the first. Harry Pascal has the character named Bosco, and he's the freakishly wide guy with a freakishly narrow waist. And in the magazines, he tells us that his snatch is 975 pounds. And it's just a cartoon figure, but Harry Pascal's numbers would be a wise thing for a lot of you guys, a lot of my readers and listeners to follow. He considers someone, reasonably strong if they snatch, clean and press and snatch 165 pounds. His dreadnought strength level is, I think it's 275 in the snatch. What I like about his numbers is that they're reasonable. They're pre-drug era. They're from 1950, 1953 maybe. And the other thing is, and a lot of you still don't know this, but when I grew up squatting, squat racks were not like they are today. They were not safe. They held the bar, and that's about all they did. So when I was young and we squatted, when your rep wasn't finished until you got, and I swear you had to land those squats on a little area about that big. And if you pushed into it, the squat stand would fall down, which, is not good. So his squat numbers are a little low. And of course, the bench press, which is probably the most recent of the serious lifts invented. I wouldn't be surprised if the bench press was less than 100 years old. It might even be much, much less than that. But bench pressing during Pascal's time, you didn't use racks. Most of the guys would do a pullover and then bench press. And when I first started bench pressing, I remember Jesse Negas and I were talking. He was one of our guards on the football team, and he was talking about how he trained at home, and all he ever did was pull over and press. So, so I still like those older numbers because the press numbers are a little more reasonable and the squat numbers are a little more reasonable. Good stuff. I like it. I think it's a good idea. All right. Mike has a question. I recently stumbled on your T-Nation article on the 10,000 kettlebell swing challenge. I have been a lifter for 12 plus years, and I went headfirst into daily swings, and my hips and back have never felt better. Good. That's outstanding, Mike. I value building muscle, especially as I get older. You're 37 now. Well, I got 30 years on you, Mike, and I got to tell you that you're investing wisely in your future. I hope you're saving money, but the two best things I can tell you, save for your retirement and keep yourself in the best shape you can from about age 35 to 55. You'll be very happy. And I grapple 1 or 2 days a week with the worst letters in any sport, BJJ. I'm curious how you'd advise someone who values hypertrophy to structure a program with a hobby like grappling. I can feel the effects of overtraining a little easier these days, and I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. Well, I have a new book coming out, and by the time this podcast comes out, it might be ready. It's on hypertrophy, Mike, and one of the things I emphasize with hypertrophy, since you're using kettlebells, I'm pushing the ABC, the armor building complex, and high rep military presses on the other day. But I'm a big believer in hypertrophy, and you're probably a little bit too young to completely focus on hypertrophy. That's more when you get about 56 or so. But I don't disagree with you. With kettlebells, and I'm just guessing that's the question, the armor building complex is marvelous. 2 cleans, 1 press, 3 front squats. I also have here on YouTube the single bell version of it. But 1-2 days a week. In the book, I give you all the specifics, but doing that 15 to 30 times is gonna get you in good shape and hit the numbers for hypertrophy. The other days of the week, I'm a big fan of high rep presses. If you're doing an easy strength program like I recommend, it's real simple. Well, here's the easiest thing you can do. Here's the answer, Mike. Go to danjohnuniversity.com, sign up, and use the workout generator. The workout generator is literally built for someone like you. It's going to be, You're going to be doing 3 sets of 8 with a variety of push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded carries, plus mobility. Then you'll slide to 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 12. Ideally, the next round through, you'll do a little bit more weight. You can repeat that for a long time. So, Mike, there's a couple ideas for you with kettlebells. Read my new book. That's not out yet as I do this. Or use the workout generator on the site. And someone got on me about, me pushing my products, but it's like, I'm not as good as the workout generator. It's my brain. It's the way I look at things. It's the way I program. But it allows you instantly to make those variations that you might need because of what equipment you have and what do you know how to do. Or you just want to try some new exercises. So that's why I like it. Could you imagine me trying to explain to every listener how to do, a pike push-up? It would be impossible. Or you can just watch the video we have right there. So thank you very much, Mike. Good question. I hope it helps. Patrick asked a question. This is not an either or question, but I was wondering if I only ever did clean and press and never did the clean and jerk, would I be missing out on anything? I'm talking specifically about double kettlebell work. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm convinced that the clean and press is the best kettlebell exercise there is. Don't tell anybody, but I think the continuous clean and press is the best barbell exercise you can do. When I do those complexes, I have this complex. It's clean and press, clean and press, clean and press, clean and press, and however reps you can do 5 or 8. And at the end of that, you do front squats. I tell you, it's when you get to the front squat, your heart rate is already bouncing through the roof. And then you add those front squats and, your thighs are still, they've been working, but they're still a little fresh. Oh, it's marvelous. Now, obviously, I think the armor building complex, 2 cleans, 1 press, 3 front squats is probably the best complex I have with kettlebells. But just doing clean and press, clean and press, clean and press just does marvelous things, especially if you're using doubles. Now, in Rite of Passage, it's a single bell program, and I had great progress. It really did prep me for when I did the RKC for the first time. I felt when I did that, I felt that was a good prep program. I also have on the site, danjohnuniversity.com, you have my whole RKC prep program. Mike Warren Brown wrote it with me, and it's quite good. I give you everything, everything you can think about. I like it a lot. But when you do double bells, I think that's when the magic happens with the clean and press. I don't like, for everybody, ballistic overhead kettlebell work. I just work with too many people with bad shoulders. 90% of North American males have a bad shoulder. It's because of all the throwing games. And it's not by, the joke I always say at certs is, if you have a bad shoulder, raise your hand. See, it's funny because they have a bad shoulder, so they can't raise their hand. But what I like about the double clean and press is that if something bad happens, you're grinding it up so it kind of grinds back down. If something in a ballistic movement, if you pop it up and something goes wrong there, I worry about people making mistakes. Now, you can take me to task for not liking a lot of the overhead ballistic stuff, but when I work with somebody from the general population, very often the most ballistic thing I would have them do is get up off of a chair. In some cases, there's some real joint and other body issues with a lot of people I try to help. So, good question. And so I don't think you're missing anything. In fact, if I was to, the clean and press, barbell, dumbbell, or kettlebell is by far my favorite movement for most people, most of the time. Okay, good question. I got a question from Andrew. Now, Andrew takes us back into the dark ages. He says, after watching your podcast 225, I thought you would like some feedback on your 10,000 swing program that I did back to back over a couple of months. I really liked it. It is simple, and I think it's the best way about it is I may have made a mistake doing it twice, though as my wrist got a little tight, all stretched out from doing handstands and the easy strength mass-made, the martial arts advice. I had tremendous results from doing the 10K with 24 kilos. I was doing low carb at the time and dropped 40 pounds and 10 inches off your waist. Andrew, okay, so first off, everybody, salute to you, Andrew. So you dropped 40 pounds and lost 10 inches off your waist by doing 500 swings a day with the 24K and low carbing. Now, he then says probably more due to diet and water retention problem than I thought, what he was having during the program. I'm trying to remember what else I was doing. Long daily walks at a high pace come to mind, about an hour. The chosen big lifts were your typical barbell compound lifts and chin-ups. I got to tell you, I thought, so that article, I wrote that article living here. I know that. So I think that article's 10 years old. And I remember being on that deck talking to the publisher and the editors at Testosterone about doing it, which I didn't think was a good idea. So obviously I did it. And so it's about 10 years old. When it first came out, there was a lot of pushback against it. People didn't like it, but it really has taken on a kind of a life of its own. And I'm very proud to be part of that. I've heard a lot of good results on this program, and a lot, Andrew, but I think there's a couple things about your insights. Now, I would say this long term. Now, I love the 10,000 swing program. I think you're smart doing a low carb diet with it. I think it was smart because we know that in the short term, low carb is the most, in the short term, low carb is the best, on your marks, get set, go. Low carb's the best sprint out of the blocks. With, of course, with adherence, all diets work the exact same in about 2 years. There was a little phrase there, with adherence, and nobody does it. The other thing you also mentioned was that you were also doing some chin-ups and long walks and stuff like that. But what I want you to make sure you hear is the combination. Now, if you're be like Andrew. If you're like Andrew and you've lost a lot of weight doing low carb, 500 swings a day, lots of other stuff, good for you. Now your job is to maintain. Frankly, if I were you, Andrew, I would slide over something, since you're walking already, maybe try one of the easy strength for fat loss variations and try that. It's a little bit easier. I would even dump the swings, do the standard, the 3 verticals. So that's a press, a pull-up, a deadlift, ab wheel, suitcase carry, go for a walk. And then just see what happens with your body mass, with maybe even do a 2, 3, 4 week trial with that, and to see if you can kind of get yourself to maintain at a much lower level of, I was going to say stress, but that's not what I mean. If you're doing 500 swings a day, there's a thing. If you're doing low carb, there's that thing. If you're doing all the extra walks, there's that thing. So easing off kind of emotionally, mentally, all the leads, if you will, and maintaining might be a real good option for you long term to make sure you're keeping those body mass changes and preparing yourself for something harder downstream a few months from now. Good question. Okay, so Jake asked a question. How does one address accessory work while keeping the main thing? Good. For instance, I am doing kettlebell swings and suitcase carries 2 days a week, heart rate training with jogging 2 days a week, with the intent to strengthen the heart, and doing mobility work via stretching and foam rolling 2 days a week. This is how I am keeping the main thing. With this, I feel I can get stronger for months, if not years to come. My question is how to add some accessory work. I am sometimes on one of the mobility days throwing in climbing the mountain of push-ups. So that's that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. or by doing weighted steady state step-ups. Every practice session is prefaced by original strength reset and ends with carries or hangs. If it helps, I think I'm a pull hinger. I seem to do best with the simple do this type programs that are followed for months. I'm with you on that. My best training is when I'm going to do 3 days a week, easy strength for fat loss with Olympic lifting, ruck, mobility, shut the brain off, see you in 8 months. Yeah. I'm trying here to play the long game. Maybe that accessory section I can change based on the season or throw it out altogether and focus on other areas of life. Less decisions is always a good thing. What are your thoughts on what to do with the desire for some accessory work in this case? Well, I like what you're doing. You're doing swings, you're doing suitcase carries, you're doing jogging, you're doing lots of mobility, you're tossing in some push-ups. It seems to me like you're doing a lot. The only thing I would say, because I want you to stick doing with what you're doing, is I would maybe add, and now I'm saying add, which is never a good idea for most people online, but I would add either an extra tiny session a week or wedge it in somewhere, maybe even in that mobility day. Yeah, that mountain of push-ups, you're doing 110 push-ups on that day, or are you doing 100? If he drops out that last set of 10, he only does one set of 10. I wouldn't mind you adding some old school bodybuilding movements, even just like I can't believe, okay, one set of 10 in the curl, one set of 10 in a tricep extension movement, maybe a vertical press, which I didn't see here, maybe a squat movement, and just make sure you keep those movements in. Anytime you feel like you're starting to get bored from this program, Jake, I would just take a few days aside and then just a few weeks aside, maybe do something as simple as the workout generator, where you have a little bit more fun with hypertrophy training, maybe even just 2 weeks of it, just to give that mental washout. My favorite thing about training for Olympic lifting meets is I know that the Monday after the meet, I'm going to be doing a bodybuilding program. And when an Olympic lifting meet gets close in my life, I know that, I time it out either 12 weeks or sometimes 8 weeks, that I know, I got one more week, working my pythons and my armacondas, and then I'll be snatching, clean and jerking and front squatting for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever. I think that mental wash can help. But overall, I would say you're doing outstanding work. Probably could use a vertical push, but now I'm just nitpicking and I apologize. Good work. I liked it. We got a question from Mo. Mo says, I'm a 28-year-old male, 5'11", 215 pounds, with around 12 years of training experience. After going through some of your older podcast clips, I found one where you're discussing the bodyweight snatch and bodyweight clean and press as the only two standards anyone really needs. Yeah, always remember in context. But if you want to, if the traditional way you prove to the world that you're strong is you clean and press your body weight and you snatch it. Now, every power lifter I know just rolled their eyes. Every kettlebeller I know said, where's the bent press in there, or whatever, the pistol or something. But yeah, I've clean and pressed and snatched body weight, most of my life. And I got to tell you something, when I held on to those two, I had the big deadlift, I had the big squat, I had the big bench, without even have to train it. So now your mileage may vary, but let's keep going. I would love to chase these two lifts as my 2024 goal, and I'd like to know how to go about it. My current lifts are 165 clean and 160, I'm thinking you mean 165 snatch and 165 clean and press. Both of these lifts are done from the hang, as I've always felt more comfortable in this position. You're 5'11", yeah, you're probably, this is going to sound strange, you might be a little too tall for the bar. That's not unusual. On the snatch, I have found the whip snatch to be my favorite variation, and ideally I'd like to see what I could do with a body weight whip snatch. Now that would be interesting. What I like about standards is that these are these lines in the sand, and when you get like Harry Pascal's Bosco standards, or you get my Sleepless in Seattle standards, or my high school Big Blue Club or Big Silver Club, they don't really mean anything. Here's what they mean, is if you're up to standard in the weight room, the problem is no longer the weight room. And that's the hardest thing for me to get across on standards. Standards have nothing to do, but standards allow you to know that you're strong enough, fast enough, big enough. You are up to standard. There comes an issue, Freakonomics has a nice little conversation. So you're at a party and somebody says, yeah, the combined height of these two guys walking down the street was 12 feet. Most of us would kind of slide into, well, they're probably both 6'6", right? Or one guy's 5'9", the other guy's 6'3". Very few of us would go, I wonder if one guy's 10 foot and the other guy's 2 foot. So standards are, okay, my point is that when you get standards, they don't always mean everything. If you were to sit down and say that the average person in the United States, average male, at 215 pounds, the average male in the United States should eat, I'm just making this up, 2,800 calories. Well, what if this average male is a Division I linebacker whose coach just told him he's got to get up to 240 and keep his speed at the same? Well, that's a different story. What if this person is morbidly obese at 215? That their lean body mass, that's, I'm just spitballing here. I apologize if I'm wrong. Their lean body mass, including bones, is 120 pounds, and the other 95 is excessive adipose tissue. Well, that magical number I just pulled out, that average means nothing. So what standards do is first off, they remind you that even chasing them puts you above average, which is really a nice thing, a nice place to be. In my inner circle, I constantly talk about being 1 in 20. Okay, here's a couple of things. According to my dentist, if you floss every day, you're 1 in 20. According to Social Security, or at least some numbers I just read from the AARP, 1 in 20 Americans can afford their retirement without any help. So I floss my teeth every day and I can retire without any help. Somebody told me one time, I can't remember the number, but it was abysmally low. If you read, I think it's 10 books a year, you're 1 in 20. Most people don't read books. Now, a lot of people I know read websites that are curated to answer all their questions that, aliens built Mount Rushmore. By the way, that's not true. So sometimes when you're looking at a number like this, just kind of remember that for you to snatch 215 and clean and press 215, that's wonderful. And I really think there's value to it. I think it's possible at your age and your experience, but obviously you're going to have to clean and press and you're going to have to snatch as the bulk of your workouts. There is, in both Easy Strength Omnibook and Easy Strength for Fat Loss, I have some easy strength approaches to it, which might not be a bad idea. I have tried snatching and clean and pressing and snatching 5 days a week in an easy strength style. I found it pretty doable, but I did start to feel, once the load started to move up, that I had to slide back down to 3 days a week for recovery. So I love what you're doing here. Just kind of keep in mind that standards just remind you that you're not average. And then the next thing that a standard does is it tells you your problems are no longer in the weight room. So many of the people who tell me, I want to lose some body fat, we'll check on their numbers in the weight room and they're very strong. It's not the weight room that is their issue. it's food preparation, it's shopping, it's the way they cook, it's the way they prepare, it's the presentation of food. It's a good question. I am going to probably do a special episode in the future on just standards, because this question seems to really be popping up a lot recently. And it is a good question. So thank you. Wow. Listen, that's it. Thank you so much. If you have questions, send them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer them. And really, until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning. Thank you.